Hello everyone and welcome back to Serious Sunday. I'm your host Luke and this is the show where I talk about video games and things. And today in video game news, we have news that Nintendo is releasing its development kit freely to the public for a very reasonable price, which is some very cool news for the independent video game development community. I've been a little bit outside of Nintendo development for the last little while, but in my experience working with the platform, Nintendo has always been something of a Galapagos, isolating itself from much of the rest of the video game development community. Once you get into the developers program and are established, it's fairly easy to work with Nintendo, but they've always had something of a fairly high point of entry. So it's nice to see that a company that has sort of traditionally felt a little bit elitist and has traditionally distanced itself to a certain extent from a lot of other developers is finally opening up, especially to the independent video game community like it is right now. At an entirely reasonable roughly $500 for the entire development kit, even hobbyist developers have the option to purchase the hardware and start getting their feet wet with creating content for the Nintendo Switch. And if any one community is perfectly suited to the overly experimentative nature of Nintendo hardware in general, it's the indie games community at large. I would go so far as to say that it's a match made in heaven. Larger companies are always, by definition, risk-averse, and won't often take very many risks on creating content that doesn't work outside of one particular set of hardware, but the indie community will wholeheartedly, I believe, grasp onto this new opportunity to build on Nintendo hardware and run hard and fast with it. I mentioned in one of my first impressions videos about the Nintendo Switch that I believe that it was their third-party support that was going to make or break the Nintendo Switch, and so I feel like this is a really great first step. High-profile AAA content creators are going to be imperative, of course, in maintaining the relevance of the hardware in general, but when you consider that Nintendo has basically been serving the anti-niche for as long as it has, small, unfettered studios like the average indie studio is perfectly suited to creating something on this brand new oddball hardware that will be quite possibly very special. I'm eagerly looking forward to seeing what the indie community comes up with. And this point in particular, among all other things, is making me much more interested in the Switch on the whole. I'm still cautiously optimistic about the hardware, but this makes me much more interested. This is already a very large tick in their favor, in my mind. They made a particularly smart choice in partnering up with Unity, which is a very commonly used free engine for video game development, so the point of entry is even lower than it has ever been before from that perspective as well. Assuming there isn't some sort of an exclusive deal between the two, I'd also like to see if Unreal 4 could start working on the Nintendo Switch as well, with native deployment tools like it has for platforms like Xbox, PlayStation, and iOS devices. Either way, being able to access the development tools using an engine that has a very low point of entry and a very robust support structure, I feel is going to have a very positive impact. And if Nintendo manages to maintain a very high standard of quality in the products that it allows to go onto its platform, then it'll be all the more a positive feature for the hardware in general. Those are just my thoughts on this particular piece of news, however. Do any of you, dear viewers, have any interest in developing on the Nintendo Switch and are planning to pick up the hardware in order to do so? Drop a comment down below with your thoughts and ideas. I would love to read them. That's it for me for today, however. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you might just consider coming back for more. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, or whatever day it is that you happen to watch this video on. Take care.